This program on investing under regulation crowdfunding is not investment advice.
Rising with the crowd, power unbound, change makers lead where hope is found. Superpowers for good, shaping the fate. Investors and dreamers open the gate. Supercross stands loud, proud and true, building tomorrow for me and you.
Welcome, everyone, to the Superpowers for Good show. I'm so excited today. We've got one of my favorite people, Kevin Shird, the author of A Life for a Life, a soon-to-be-released book, is with us today, and I'm so eager to introduce you to Kevin. Kevin, welcome back to the show. It's great to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing great, Devin. How about yourself?
Doing great. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us again today. Your new book is coming out, A Life for a Life.
Yeah.
And I think of this as such a profoundly important discussion. And this is about not only your prison experience and the powerful lessons you've learned, an exploration of some of the other people that you came to know, their experiences, the lessons they're learning. I wonder if we just frame this discussion a little bit. You shared a picture with me, and let me just pop this up on the screen here. But you shared this great picture of a time when you were in prison, as I understand it. Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Well, it was 20 years ago, and it was a journey, right? It was a journey filled with highs and lows, mostly lows. But it was also a learning opportunity because it's also the place where I took college and education very serious. And without that, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today, right? Just learning from your mistakes, but also learning how to get stronger, better, and how to be a contributor to society instead of a drain on society.
Yeah. It's clear that this was in some ways, a defining experience for you. And you used the opportunity to get education and to let this experience be life-changing rather than life-defining. How did you make that transition? How did that work for you? Because it doesn't work for everyone. How did you make that work?
To be honest with you, it felt like I was in a life or death situation. And when you're in that kind of situation, it'll pull a piece of you to the top that you didn't even know existed. That's what happened in my situation. I felt like I was in the worst situation ever. And I realized I had to do something about it. And that's where things started to click. And I also realized that education would be my way out of this mess. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Education would be the answer out of this mess.
It makes clear sense. But of course, not everyone's able to do that. And one of the people that you came to know in prison was a fellow by the name of Damien. And Damien got out of prison before you did.
Yeah.
But his experience has been different than yours. Tell us a little bit about his journey, how it differs from yours, and what lessons you take from his experience.
So we met inside of a federal prison in 2002, and he became a cellmate of mine. At the time, I was working in the education building as a clerk. And so I would try to persuade him to come up to the education building. At the time when I met him, he only had about a year and a little bit change left on the sentence. So I always try to tell him, hey, one day you'll be back in the community. You'll be looking for a job. You'll be trying to take care of your family. You'll be trying to take care of your daughter. You'll be trying to take care of yourself. And how are you going to accomplish that? And I used to talk to him about, you'll never have this much free time on your hands again. So the best thing to do is take advantage of an education and things that you could take with you once you leave this place, which was the penitentiary at the time. And so education was a priority for me. And I tried to help him make education a priority for himself. So I would always tell him, hey, come up to the education building. They got books, you can study. I think he was talking at the time, I think he was talking about getting a CDL to drive a truck, commercial driver's license. And I said, hey, there's study guides there. There's all kinds of stuff that you can look into that could help you, while you're here, that you could use once you get back to the streets. And sometimes he would do it. And then other times he often got into arguments with inmates, and petty arguments and guards about things that didn't matter at all. And at that time, I attributed to his age, because he was a few years younger than me at the time. And I didn't think much of it other than he's immature and he really needs to start focusing on what he's going to do when he gets out of prison, if that makes sense.
It really does. And as you, over the years, you've mentored him. Are you still in touch with Damien? Still mentoring him as a friend, as a colleague?
He's in prison now. And we talk periodically. Matter of fact, in the last 2 or 3 years, we talk pretty frequently on the phone. During COVID, they had the video visits. So we'd do the video visits. We would talk frequently. I interviewed him extensively for the book with his permission to try to get the background on his life, because I didn't know all of the story that led him back into prison. And also I wanted to make sure I got the story correct. But I also thought it was important for the readers to hear his words, because today he's serving a life sentence plus 35 years in prison. And mind you, like I mentioned before, when I first met him, he had a 2-year sentence, and he had about a year left when I first met him. And now he's doing a life sentence plus 35 additional years, which is an incredible amount of time.
But as you talk to him about his experiences, what do you think you and he did most differently in terms of it? Was it a mental health coping mechanism that you were able to achieve? Was it self-discipline? Was it contextual? What led you to succeed and on the outside, and for him to return to prison? What do you think was the difference?
Yeah, it was several things. He had been traumatized multiple times and been re-traumatized over and over, beginning with the death of his mother at 15 years old, who was addicted to crack cocaine, the rejection of his father at 15 years old, who was addicted to heroin and HIV positive. And so after his mother died, he was traumatized as a teenager. And which at that time he began to drink. Of course, that didn't make it any better. And then I think, as I wrote in the book, in 2000, one of his best friends was murdered and died in his arms. And then 2 weeks after that, he was basically a victim in a mass shooting where 12 people were shot. And a good friend of his was shot in the head that day, and she died. So he had been traumatized over and over and over again, and never got any help, never got any support or counseling. And then on top of that, he was basically addicted to alcohol. He became addicted to alcohol, because even during the murder that he committed, which led him to be sentenced to life plus 35 years in prison, he was experiencing alcohol withdrawal syndrome at the time. So it was just a constant traumatize, re-traumatize, and using alcohol to self-medicate, which is always a bad idea. And he literally just snowballed out of control. And oftentimes I think to myself, what person who had that kind of history with their exposure to trauma over and over again, I don't know who could manage that. On top of that, becoming addicted to alcohol. That's a hard hill to climb. And he certainly wasn't successful at it, because what he was doing was he was using alcohol to self-medicate. And that's always a bad idea. Always a bad idea.
Yeah. The part of what you have done is to develop this genuine expertise, and you become an authority. You teach, you're a professor, you do all this great stuff, helping people understand this. But clearly, you talk about the trauma that Damien experienced and the self-medication. Really, what we're talking about is a failure of mental health care, right? To help him cope with the trauma and difficulties he was experiencing. How do you think about that today, given all of the experiences you've had?
Mm-hmm. So even in the book, I talked about, I spent a total of 12 years in prison in total. And there was a time where I was having some issues reconciling with some things that happened in the past, namely being exposed to violence. And a friend of mine suggested that I speak to a mental health professional. And as I documented in the book, the first go around, it didn't end well, but I did continue, and it certainly helped me turn the corner. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I just hung in there, because I began to realize how important it was for me to get the support that I needed. But then also I began to realize how important writing became a part of my therapy, and it also became a part of my healing. And again, when a person feels like they need something, and I think all of us in the world, we have our good days and bad days, but you have to have a place to go. You gotta have a place to go to talk to someone and just try to manage whatever it is that you're going through at that time.
Yeah.
Some of us have that. Go ahead.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's challenging to deal with all of these issues, and I appreciate the exploration in A Life for a Life, your book. I wonder if you just tell us now, how can people pre-order the book? When will it be released? This is an important work that people need to access.
Yeah, exactly. So Simon & Schuster is my distributor. It can be found on all Simon & Schuster's platforms. It can be found in Amazon, of course, Barnes & Nobles, and several other platforms. We've begun to pre-order the book. It'll be released on April the 1st, 2025, and I'm super excited about that. I think this is going to be a book for the ages. The issue of mental health, the issue of trauma, it's beginning to really, really percolate in the ears of America. And I think people are really starting to understand what we need to do to move forward and grow from this situation. I think I mentioned to you before, a guy wakes up with a toothache, there's no hesitation about what the next step is going to be. Most of the time is I'm going to see a dentist. Nobody's going to walk around with if you can avoid it, walk around with an achy tooth, right? In most cases, it's often painful, right? But we don't look at the issue. We don't look at the issue of mental health in that way. With the issue of mental health, but stay strong and hang in there. Be a tough guy, right? All these foolish things that we have when it comes to mental health. The stigma around mental health is so challenging to men and women, and we got to be able to get past that, right? because
Yeah.
nobody should be walking. Nobody should be walking
You're
around.
exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. So true. Listen, we got to take a quick break here. I'm here today with Kevin Shird. He is the author of A Life for a Life. This is a book that'll be out in April, but you can pre-order it now on Amazon or elsewhere. Fascinating discussion we've had. We're going to stick around though. After the break, we're going to talk to Kevin about his superpower. You don't want to miss this. So come back.
You can get in on the ground floor to help fix the climate crisis for as little as $100. Pause now to scan the QR code to get started or visit s4g.biz/raisegreen. You can beat a green at Raise Green.
Want to learn from the world's great changemakers? Find your superpower. Subscribe to the Superpowers for Good newsletter at superpowersforgood.com. Make your strengths into superpowers that will change the world. Join the super crowd today. Superpowers4good.com.
Hope to raise money from the impact crowd. Good investors are as interested in community, social or environmental impact as you. Connect with Funding Hope, an SEC-registered FINRA member crowdfunding portal to learn how to raise capital from the impact crowd. Scan the QR code now.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with Kevin Shird, the author of A Life for a Life. And we're going to be talking now to Kevin a little bit about his superpower. Kevin, you're really a remarkable individual. And I realize in A Life for a Life, your new book, you talk about your experience and implicitly or explicitly contrast that with Damien's experience, who's now in prison doing a new, I think, 30-year term involved in a double murder. It's a tough situation.
Mm-hmm.
But you are a professor. You're highly esteemed and regarded. You've written several books. You're a big deal. What is your superpower?
I think it's doing the work, man. I had people a long time ago tell me, your work speaks for itself. So you don't have to talk. You don't have to brag about it. You don't have to show it off. Just do the work, and the work, that'll take care of everything. And so I adopted that approach maybe 15 years ago, where just put your head down and just get the work done. And again, your work will speak for itself. Without the work, I'm just a guy. But the fact that, and the sacrifice, because the work, where there's work, there comes sacrifice. And in total, I've published, this will be my 4th book published for myself, but it's actually 13 books that I've written over the last 10, 11 years as a ghostwriter as well. It's a huge sacrifice with that. I've lost time spending with children. I've lost girlfriends. I've screwed up whole vacations because my preference to sit in a hotel room and write. There's a sacrifice that comes with the work, but also with the work, that you'll be able to appreciate the results at the end. And when you connect that with supporting people, changing lives, helping people see things from a different perspective, it's certainly gratifying, to say the least. But you got to be willing to put your head down and just do the work. And everything else, it'll take care of itself. It'll take care of itself.
As you think about your experience just doing the work, you highlighted a couple of examples, but I wonder if you could share a story that specifically illustrates the importance of doing the work. And we just have a minute for a quick story.
You know what? In 2016, after writing my first book, I was invited to Dallas, Texas, the leadership at the United States Conference of Mayors. And I was part of a panel with the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy and the Justice Department to talk about the heroin epidemic in America and how we could impact that. And it was just, first of all, I couldn't believe that a group would pay a guy that used to be involved in drug trafficking to come speak to mayors from all over the United States about what we can do to impact the opioid epidemic in America. And so for me, it was eye-opening in the sense that I really started understanding there is some value in that experience. But also people need help. And this is your opportunity to extend and support that. So that was really great work that we did with the United States Conference of Mayors that led into more work. That also eventually led into me being invited to the White House, which was a pretty cool experience. First of all, I never thought
I guess so.
pass the background check with the Secret Service. But
Oh man,
that was pretty
wow.
It was gratifying. It was really gratifying.
Yeah, I guess so.
Example of doing
We
the
have
work.
time for we
Mhm.
have time for one quick tip. How can we all get better at just doing the work, putting our heads down and getting it done?
Sacrifice and focus. That's it. It's real simple. It's really not complex. You're going to have a lot of distractions. There's a lot of noise on the outside. A lot of people that tell you you shouldn't do it. You can't do it. But sacrifice, put your head down, stay focused. And at the end of the day, you'll appreciate the results, but you'll also be able to reap the benefits of the results.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. As we wrap up here, Kevin, let's just take a second, remind people how to find the book and when it will be released. Let's make sure that everyone who wants a copy gets a copy.
So A Life for Life, Amazon.com, Simon & Schuster, Barnes & Nobles. We started the pre-orders. The book will be released on April the 1st, 2025, but you can start ordering the book today, like right now. Like as soon as you get off of this podcast, order the book, please. And you're going to like
All
it.
right.
You're gonna
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. This is such an important discussion. I'm grateful that you would make the time. When I wish you every success with the release of the book. I hope this is a New York Times bestseller for a year or two. That's all it needs. A couple of short years on the New York Times bestseller list. That would be good. Listen, we do genuinely wish you success, Kevin. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's do some good.